Good morning, everybody. I love. All righty, everybody. I love the energy today. Yes, such a lively morning. It is 70 degrees out. Okay, good morning to all of you here in our sanctuary of the Metro East Unitarian Universalist Congregation, and greetings to those watching the service remotely. This is a welcoming religious community, and we are glad you are all here. My name is Nathan Brown. I'm one of the worship associates. My pronouns are they and them, and I also serve on the Religious Education Committee. And I am delighted that you are all here. We are also spiritually led by the Reverend Dr. Claudia Hall, right behind me. So it is good to see you all here today, both new friends, longtime members, and returning folks. And I hope you all take the time in coffee hour to reach out to somebody you may not know, because I brewed the coffee today. It might be a little strong, but you know what? It's a nice day out, and just glad for the wonderful energy today. We welcome everyone to this home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope. We are Unitarian Universalists. I just love that. An important ritual in the Unitarian Universalist faith is the lighting of our chalice. Unitarian Universalists have many different interpretations of a flaming chalice, including the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. If you are watching elsewhere and have a chalice or a candle, please light it now as we all join in saying our unison words projected on our screen.
Light this chalice in hope for the future of our church, our community, and our world. May love center us always. Will you join with me as you're willing and able in a spirit of prayer and meditation? Spirit of gathering and relationships, help us all this day to discern when our boundaries are healthy and life-giving and when they are simply prejudice. As we explore what equality can mean in the face of rising discrimination, may we be open to the fuzzy edges where the possible can take root. May we have the strength to hold fast when the sharp distinctions are necessary for true equality to flourish. And when we differ in our discernment of those places, grant us the heart skill of deep listening and deep empathy to sit in the other's place so that we never reduce others to just our disagreements, but rather try to appreciate them for all their human complexity and wonder. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you all to take a moment this morning as you're able and to greet somebody that you don't know quite as well and make a new connection. And then we're going to sing our first hymn, 1060. Our first hymn this morning is out of the Teal hymnal. It's number 1060, as we sing of hope and joy today.
As we sing of hope and joy today, some know only anguish and despair. How can we lift our voices in this way? Some have pain and misery to spare. If a crumbling world we would renew, we must sing no ordinary song. Hills from a noisy gong will never do. In every breath compassion must belong. Let this song our greatest hopes contain, laughter of a well-fed childish tune, roofs over every heartbeat, its refrain, its harmony from peaceful cities hewn. Sing of joy while hammering each nail. Sing of hope while pulling every weed. So shall we sing together and prevail. May every alleluia bear a seed.
It's a tradition here at the Metro East Unitarian Universalist congregation to place each service within the larger values that we as Unitarian Universalists hold dear. This week, and actually this whole month, we are lifting up the value of equity, but specifically, we are also lifting up pluralism this week. Equity is the topic of this whole month's sermon series, and it's more than just giving everybody the same thing. True equity is meeting each person where they are and helping to figure out what they need to truly flourish, given the conditions that both they and the world are working under. So for many who have less in our world, less education, less welcome skin colors, languages or accents, or less money, whatever their less might be, true equity is not just saying, oh, we're going to be colorblind now and give you the same shake as an educated, rich, white, cisgender, heterosexual, able-bodied man. Saying it isn't enough. True equity is first and foremost helping in whatever way to flourish in a world that is stacked against them. First step. And second, to unstack and restack the world in ways that are more fair for everyone. This doesn't just mean flipping the stack and putting white dudes at the bottom, because all that does is create a new cycle of inequity. It would be fun for a lot of us. We'd like to see that happen a little bit, right? And see some of these billionaires brought low. I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of like a nice little fantasy I have some days. But at the same time, all that would do is create more inequality, and at some point, those people would then be the ones who would need the helping hand up. The point that we're trying to get to build heaven on earth is to say, we have to fix this cycle. We have to find a way to level the field so there aren't haves and have-nots stacked up top and stacked down on. We got to find a different game to play other than oppressed and oppressor. This is the path to actual equity. Now, pluralism gives us lots of ideas for how to get there. Many of these ideas are fantastic. Wealth redistribution is something that a lot of people kind of look on and go, oh, blah, 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 that's so silly. Nobody's ever done that, and it's such a modern, crazy, hippie thing to do. Do you know that in the Bible, the God of the Hebrews commands that every 50 years all debts be forgiven and the land and wealth be redistributed among the 12 tribes of Israel? I'm just saying, I don't make this stuff up, right? 5,000 years ago, the people of Israel said, maybe every generation or two, we need to redistribute the wealth so that we don't get haves and have-nots. Maybe, right? If you're following the Bible, and it's in the same area where you get that whole, God hates shrimp thing, so maybe if you're going to hate on certain things that you find in the Hebrew scriptures, you ought to also hate on wealth incompatibility. Just throw that out there. Anyway, let's move on. Okay. Some are too idealistic, we may say. Some may be cynical. But the truth is, pluralism is looking at the world through a kaleidoscope. You can see incredible and beautiful patterns that never would have existed without the tumble of fragments repeated across mirrors. But as beautiful as it is, you're still never seeing the world in full. And that's fine. Because the point of living in a pluralistic society is not to arrive at one view, the one true way where everyone agrees on the right kind of music or the proper food for lunch. The point of living in a pluralistic society is not to reduce us to one thing. Momentary soapbox, because it's my altar and I can do it. These people who want to post the 10 Commandments in schools, did you know there are 4 different versions of the 10 Commandments in the Hebrew Scriptures, people? Which one do they want to post? Let's just start with the basics. They don't even know the Bible that they're trying to put in the schools. Okay? For those of us who have read these scriptures, it's in there differently. Oh, and not even to mention the fact that Jewish people have a different list. Throwing this out here. So what we're looking at is, instead of this idea of let's shove everybody into one box, one size fits nobody, we need to see that all of us have beauty and all of us have some spots that aren't so great, right? Every culture has some stuff that's garbage in it. Every single culture has some stuff that's rotten, and every single culture has some stuff that's amazing, usually the food. All societies are beautiful and all are broken. But it's only when we line them up together in a beautiful pattern and mirror them back and forth to each other that we can be made whole and create that beauty. Equity says we need each other in all our broken wonder in order to create a society that is truly whole. That is what our faith is teaching us can create heaven on earth. Amen, and blessed be. We come now to the part of our weekly worship service where we take time to express our joys, concerns, and sorrows. We gather as a community today knowing that many of us have been touched by these terrible storms that have gone through the St. Louis area. We know that climate change is what is causing these horrible tornadoes to be coming over and over and over so rapidly, so harshly through our area. And we know that the poor and impoverished are the people who are being affected the most because they are the ones that don't have good insurance. They are the ones that can't afford to wait and rebuild later. They are the ones who can't just move somewhere else in the interim. So our hearts go out to all who are affected, but especially those who are at the bottom of that heap, who are reaping the injustices of the others in this place. For anyone who has personally been impacted, please, if you have a need, let us know. We do have the Minister's Discretionary Fund that can help if you need cleanup on your house or anything else. Anyone else who has a need or knows of a need, let us know. And we'll talk more about the cleanup at First Church UU when we get to our announcements. They did not sustain, thankfully, major damage to their building, but they did have a lot of trees down and a few broken windows. So that said, we also have lots of other joys and concerns and sorrows amongst us, and I know from talking to many of you, lots of you have all of those in sort of balls that you're just juggling as we go along. So I invite you now, as always, to come forward, take a stone or many as you need, place them in the water to remind yourself that you are enveloped in the love of this community, and then return back in your seat as you can. For those who are not able to make it forward, please know that we are going to place stones for you as well, because in this community, we share all things, our burdens and our joys, with each other. Let us be in a spirit of prayer and meditation. So this morning, as we talk about equity and what that means for us as a people, I wanted to talk about one of the topics that's really difficult for us to sort of honestly admit, and that's our implicit biases. And so today, our children's video for Time for All Ages is talking about implicit bias. What is it? How do we measure it? How do we talk about it? And so we're going to talk a little bit about this video, or watch this video, and then our kids are going to have their musical dismissal for RE, and then we'll go into our hymn.
Our last episode on implicit memory left you with this point. We don't know our minds. At least not completely. But in the 1990s, psychologists Mahzarin Banaji, Tony Greenwald, and Brian Nosek put online the test that would shine light on the hidden parts of our minds. The IAT, Implicit Association Test. The idea behind the test is simple. Certain concepts just go together.
Mother and father. Bread and butter.
This means it's easier for our minds to connect them. And things that are easier should be faster. So imagine this. You sit down at a computer and are shown pictures of flowers and insects. All you have to do is sort them. Sometimes you're sorting flowers with good words.
Words like sunshine and love and peace and joy and things like that.
And insects with bad words.
Devil, bomb, war, vomit.
Sometimes you have to do the opposite. Sort flowers with vomit and bugs with joy. One version is a lot easier than the other. We all know which one. Flowers with good, insects with bad. These pairings are faster. Maybe just by a few milliseconds, maybe by a few hundred. Just how much faster tells you how strong these implicit associations are. That's it. They had realized that one way to measure the mind was to measure time. And once they had the test, the questions were endless.
White and bad, black and white and bad, black and good. Why should that be any different than the one before? So I was quite stunned when my fingers almost couldn't find their way on the keyboard, when I couldn't keep in mind which had to go where. I made many more mistakes. I took 1.5 times as long to do it. By the end of this 3-minute experience, I was in a sweat. And my first thought was, something is screwed up with this test, because it can't be me. I know my mind.
But it wasn't the test.
You're taking this for the umpteenth time, and you still haven't caught on to the fact that you're a little biased.
They shared it with friends and family, students in their labs, fellow scientists at conferences. The results were clear.
So when people say, well, I'm colorblind, I don't see color, this test shows otherwise.
Quite a bit otherwise.
Somehow, the IAT could tap into implicit associations people didn't even know they had.
You're flabbergasted.
I'm flabbergasted.
Mahzarin, Tony, and Brian began joking.
These effects are so big, you could even pick it up on the internet.
And then they put it online. And it went viral. Since 1998, millions of tests have been taken around the world. And this data is powerful. The responses tell us that our implicit attitudes can change. Over the past 20 years, they have changed, at least some of them. This change isn't something that happens over the course of a single podcast or seminar. But this tells us that with time and practice, we can reshape our minds. And that's something worth working towards.
As you journey, may you know, love and hope go with you, love and hope go with you, learn and grow, learn and grow. Our next hymn is also in the Teal hymnal today. Let This Be a House of Peace, number 1054.
be a house of peace. Let this be a house of freedom. Guardian of dignity and worth held deep inside us. Let this be our house, a platform for the free voice, where all our sacred differences here shall not divide us. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let all in this house seek truth, where scientists and mystics abide in reverence here. Let this be our house, a house of our creation, where works of art and melodies consecrate the atmosphere. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of prophecy. May vision for our children be our common theme. Let this be our house of faith and lore and legend, a trove of ancient story and cradle of our tender dreams. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace.
Well, good morning again, everybody, and welcome to another Sunday. I was going to say a lovely Sunday, but we got more thunderstorms rolling in this afternoon, so we're going to enjoy it while we've got it. Tonight, tomorrow, next week, you know, it's going to get here at some point. My sinuses, my head has been telling me it's coming, so I don't know. You tell me. Today, we're going to talk about equity as it relates to gender. And I have to admit that this was one of those sermons where I sort of started with a fuzzy concept and it just sort of took on a life of its own as I went in talking about it. So partially because it's really difficult to wrap my mind around this entire concept, because on the one hand, I absolutely believe in the equity of all genders, and on the other hand, it gets really fuzzy when you start talking about what is gender and like why do we need it and is it important, and it just gets all wibbly wobbly for a lot of us. And so then we got into the implicit bias stuff, and that has its own weight and baggage associated with it, especially in a religious context. I would say of all the places where we have implicit bias and outright bias in the world today, religion is still probably the number one place where it shows up. As most of you know, we have a new pope, and obviously he's a he, right? Despite the fact that there were absolutely, any of you who took my class know, there were women priests. It's a thing. It's in the Bible. You know, the church has written them out. That the fact that Mary Magdalene was the first person to see the resurrection was written out. She was turned into a prostitute. She is not a prostitute in the Bible. I want to make that very clear. She was turned into that by the church to downplay the fact that she was the first person to see the risen Christ, right? She was so foundational to the church that they had to denigrate her, to get rid of her as an example to others. The women who were so foundational to the foundation, literally foundational to the foundation of Christianity, they were the people who founded churches. They were the people who inspired the growth of Christianity in the Greek and Roman worlds. They had to be reduced and are continuously reduced by translators to helpers, when it's the exact same word that is used in every other context for a man as minister. Bias is so real, and it is so full of venom and hate. And as someone who has a figure that anyone looking at me would say, oh, that's a female. Sorry, I got it from my mom. What can I say? It's one of those things that I have faced this a lot. So I also have my own stuff that came up with this sermon. So there was a lot going on here. So I want to just say that I'm really focusing on trying to sort through all that as I wrote this sermon, and I hope I got through most of it. We'll see. Today I wanted to focus on religion and gender, but at the same time, I think that it's always wrapped up, right? We can't chop our religion or our spirituality away from what we do at the grocery store or how we act in public or any other part of ourselves, because we are individuals that exist in a world, and we've got layers upon layers of who we are and how we interact. We're like a Venn diagram that lives in a swirl of Venn diagrams. What version of Windows was it? Somebody help me. You used to get those little screensaver things that did like this. Okay, age test for all of us. Got it. Moving on. A couple of people don't get it. It's okay. You're young. It's okay. Moving on. Moving right along. But talk about religion. So in religion, it is not even the slightest bit implicit, right? Like it's here and it's in your face all the time. Many of you have heard this story before, that when I was a child, I was probably like 11 or so. I was in the Southern Baptist Church, another bastion of liberality for women, let me tell you. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, a few of you shuddering. You're with me. Okay. So they had a revival, right? And that's an old-timey kind of thing where they basically, everybody gets all hyped up, and you're supposed to have some big emotional moment where things happen. And in this case, what was supposed to happen to all of us youth was we were supposed to discern God's call for our life. Yes, and get saved, because you had to be saved like every 5 minutes, because you were all going to hell all the time. Anyway, God loves you very, very much and is also condemning you all to hell. Yes, but at this particular revival, the thing was we were supposed to be in the Word, in the Bible, reading the Bible, praying about the Bible, discerning what God was calling us to be. And so they came down, the pews, and they were laying on hands and praying for you, and everybody was going to give their call. And I looked in the youth leader, and I said, God is calling me to be a minister. And he looked me in the eyes, and he said, you are wrong, because God would never call a woman to ministry. Well, here I am with 27 years this year of ministry under my belt. So someone was wrong, but it does not appear to have been me. But that is the thing with conservative religions. They don't believe in gender equality. First of all, they only see two genders, right? There's a lot more than that out there. But they only see two, and then they separate those genders into two different worlds. I don't know about you, but I have this guilty habit reading. Do any of you have that like reading that you go to because it's so formulaic and you know exactly what's going to happen and it's perfectly fine? I love Regency era historical fiction. Okay, like pre-Victorian era stuff, right? Vinny approves, so it's okay. But it's one of those things that women and men in Britain in that era, and this is where we get a lot of this from, is why I'm digressing into my reading habits, okay? But women and men in that era lived separate lives. They had separate bedrooms, they had separate social circles, they had separate everything. You came together to produce an heir and a spare, and then you lived your separate life and literally never saw each other than very, very limited social events. And that's the way a lot of these conservative religions are still to this day. You know, you have men's Bible study and women's Bible study. You have men's group and women's group. You have men's teaching and women's teaching. You have men's club and women's club and men's retreats and women's retreats. And literally, you have two different worlds within the same congregation. You are expected to spend almost all of your time with your gender, not with your spouse or your family. Because in these religions, genders are scary, especially the female gender. It's a very scary thing. Apparently, women, although men have all the power, women are somehow these terrifying things that are going to do all the bad things in the religion, right? Now, this is not just Christianity. I'm not just ditching on one religion here. This is every major religion in the world, okay? If you go into most of India, right, the Hindus, they have completely separate lives. And sometimes the women, especially during their menstrual cycles, are treated in absolutely horrific ways, okay? Islam, absolutely horrific, the way they treat their women in most of the countries of the world. Does it have to be this way? No. But even in Sikhism, which we know was founded, and the Guru said there is no distinction between men and women. That is a core tenet of Sikhism. But women do not run half the Gurudwaras. They run like less than 10% of them. Why is that? That's a core tenet of their religion is gender equality, and yet they are still not equal. There is nothing close to it in any major religion in the world. Men still have all the power, but women fill all the pews. That is the relationship in religion. Now, in small religions, where there's more equality between men and women, and again, 2 genders for now, work with me, I know there's more than that, but in those smaller religions, like Unitarian Universalism, okay, where we have 2 or more, and we have more equality, what happens is people look and they say, oh, well, those are so small and they're dying, and so that's the problem. The problem is because you let women be in charge. Okay? Instead of saying that maybe we're small because we don't force conversion down everybody's throat, right? And scare people into the pews every Sunday. Maybe we're just not that worried about everybody dying and going to hell every week. Maybe we want people to be happy. Anyway, so much of this in religion is not inherent to the religion. And I really want to say that because that's really important to know, okay? There is absolutely nothing in Christianity, especially things like Christianity and Sikhism, because Jesus loved women. His closest friends are women. The first person to see him after the resurrection is a woman. He is incredibly close to women. They are his biggest supporters and his friends. He's incredibly feminist. He opens the world to them. There is nothing in Christianity that should hold women back from anything. There is nothing in Sikhism that should hold women back from anything. In Islam, okay, the Quran itself, one surah is completely dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Like, there is so much reverence for women in the actual Quran that does not translate out. So it's not the fault of the founders of these religions or of their holy texts. It is the fault of the interpretation of these texts through the culture that they inherited, right? So Christianity was doing great. It was very open and very approachable and very wonderful. And then it became the state religion of Rome. And Rome went, hold on now. You're getting way too wild out there. We're just going to push those women back down because they're getting a little uppity over here. And that's when you start getting books like Titus and these other ones that start talking about, well, we can't let the women talk in church. And so what you're seeing there is you're seeing them already by the end of the 1st and 2nd centuries, they're taking Jesus out of the equation and replacing him with Rome and with the Roman culture. And that's what you see in all of these religions is they take the founder with the message of love and hope and peace and joy, and they replace them with the culture so that the religious tolerance, the religious love, the transformative gospel messages that these religious founders have gets replaced with the same old prejudice and hate and implicit bias that you see anywhere else. Now, this bothers me on a personal level as someone who has fought this my whole life, but also on a corporate level, because what I'm seeing is that the gender biases are wrecking us on so many levels. So at the same time, I also hear from people who feel like our lack of gender roles makes them feel a little like they can't express themselves. And so they feel like they want to be more precise about something, or like they want to do something, but they don't know how to do it. And so then I kind of had to go step back and go, okay, so when is it a good thing to focus on one gender or another? And when is it not a good thing? Is it ever a good thing? And so those were the kinds of questions that started popping up and bubbling up as I was talking about this sermon. So let's look at times that it is not a good idea, and let's look at times that it's perfectly acceptable. Because I do think there are some times, and you're all looking at me already going, what? I do think there are some times where it's acceptable to have some gender focus. When is it acceptable? Okay? Using our core values of justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, generosity. When should we focus on a narrow group? So the basic answer is when it furthers one of those values, right? Like those are the times where we should say that's a good thing. Now, we can't twist it into a pretzel to do it. I know people who do that all the time, Congress. And, they kind of twist it way out of shape of what it should have been. But I would say, for me, one of the biggest areas I see it right now is this idea that we don't need to focus on women in healthcare. Okay? And I'm specifically, I know trans folks, you're also here. You're even farther out on the not focused on groups, right? So we're also gonna put you in that. But let's, even just focusing on women, the fact that clinical studies almost always exclude transgender folks from the get-go simply because of the medications they're on, okay? But also, medicines are developed and tested on men. They're developed in male models, they're tested on male mice, they're tested on male beagles, they're tested on male chimps, they're tested on male humans, and then they're given to male people. There are different chemical compositions in a body that has different DNA, right? Like an XY chromosome human does have different biochemistry in some ways than an XX human. Those are some basic differences, and we're not researching that. It took well over 100 years for them to figure out that, oh my gosh, did you know that an XX and an XY actually have different things go on when they're in pain? Instead of just telling them, oh, this is an issue, let's look at this. Did you know that the majority of research, are you ready for this? The majority of research on the drugs that are used in labor and delivery were originally done on men. I don't even know what to do with that. Now, yes, there are some guys who can have babies thanks to our advances in transgender medicine, and I'm not excluding those folks. But for the vast majority of men, right? Like, that is not the medicine we need to be looking at. Like, we need to be testing those medicines on the people who are having the vast majority of babies, okay? Come on. So I do think that we have some serious bias issues when it comes to medicine. According to the American Heart Association, 1 of 3 women, 33%, will die from heart disease. But 70%, 70% of residents, doctoral residents, have never received a single bit of training on how to treat women's heart health. 70% of the doctors in this country have no idea what to look for in a woman and their heart. 70%, even though 33% of us are gonna die of a heart-related condition. That is some bias right there. And as a person with a cardiologist, I can tell you it's important, because it took me 3 men not diagnosing me properly before I got a woman who spent like 15 minutes with me and said, yeah, I know exactly what your problem is. Because as a woman who's been fighting the bias in the system for decades, she basically exclusively focuses on women. Now, we shouldn't force that. Women shouldn't be the only doctors who can treat women. Like, come on. We should be teaching our doctors how to treat all their patients, right? It's not just the heart. Literally, if it's not breast cancer or reproductive organs, we don't teach doctors about women. We just don't. And now, thanks to the garbage in Missouri, we don't teach them about the reproductive organs. So like half the country isn't even getting reproductive care anymore. So how are our poor doctors going to, and it's not the doctor's fault. A doctor can't know what they're not taught, right? Like, it's not their fault, it's the politicians. So we, as a religious people, need to be standing up and going, whoa, folks, we need this. This is important. And clinical studies bills do not make the press, right? This is not high-end stuff. This does not get protest marches and other stuff. But it is important. 33% of women are going to die of heart disease, but 70% of doctors have no idea what to look for. Because guess what? Women don't have the same heart attack symptoms as men most of the time. Okay, moving on. So medicine is definitely an area where we need to separate out people based on their biology, their gender, different things, and say, you need different studies, you need different medications, you need different doses, you need all kinds of stuff. We need to be separate on this. Okay, same is true for minorities. You guys have all been to a doctor's office, I'm assuming. Okay, I'm just gonna assume this. Have you had the little thing that they put on your finger with the little red light, right? The oximeter? So what does it do? Measures the oxygen. Measures the oxygen in your blood. Do you know how it does that? Bingo, it pushes light. It pushes red light through your skin, through your nail, through your skin, and bounces it back off. And how much that goes through tells you how much oxygen is in, how many blood cells and how much oxygen is in there. Here's the problem. They only tested those on white skin. So when COVID shows up, and African American folks and other people with dark melanated skin start going to the hospital in droves, they're like, oh, your oxygen's fine, go home. And then they start dying in droves. And then finally somebody goes, these oximeters are not working right. And they started testing through arterial blood gases. And they started realizing that they can be up to 10% off. That is monstrously different. That is life and death different. 10%. Nobody ever thought to say, maybe we ought to check this thing on all tones of skin? Now, I don't think there was a single doctor or medical person who was like, I'm a racist jerk and I'm just gonna, make a bunch of black people die. I don't think that's what happened, because I know doctors and they're wonderful people. Okay? I think that was an implicit bias. I think that's a case of just, let's find 50 volunteers, okay? You're the first 50 that showed up, cool, let's do it. Let's stick this on and see how it works. And they just never crossed their mind that the light might refract differently through darker skin. And unfortunately, an awful lot of people died because of that mistake. So the same things that happen to women also happen to minorities. And again, trans folks, we're talking a whole nother level of care that these folks need because of the complexities of their gender and sex situations. So each patient winds up being a lab rat because the doctors don't have the data, because the studies aren't being conducted, because our politicians are biased little nuts. Okay, so medicine, big deal, need to separate it all out, need to have focus, need to have the money go into it. So let's contrast that with some things that make no sense whatsoever, okay? I went to Lowe's, and it's not just Lowe's, Home Depot and Walmart, everybody does this, okay? But this was specifically when I was at Lowe's, so I'm gonna use them. I go in and I'm looking for something, and I see that they're having a display of Women's Rights Month or something. Okay, that's cool. Like, I'm glad they're acknowledging it. That's great. So I walk over there. I'm like, what have they got on offer? A pink toolbox with pink tools. I genuinely do not think that a Phillips screwdriver works any better in pink than in black. I'm pretty sure that is an example of the kind of distinctions we don't need. Now, if you like pink, great, more power to you. But the idea that some company person thought, oh, we're going to market to girls by making something pink, that's somehow like all we have to do to make home repair, easy for women is to make the tool pink. That is not the kind of gender distinction I want to see, right? That is not reasonable. Let's talk about another one. Let's talk about sports ball. Now, I am not a lover of sports ball by any means, but I do know how bias works. I know that when you put a ball in a little kid's hand, and that kid turns out to be good at it, but then you don't provide funding for their team, you don't fund their league, you don't fund their coach, you don't fund their sport as a whole, you don't put them in the front row, you don't put them on Friday night at the Marquee, you don't give them a field to practice in, but you make them practice down the way at this little run-around sports complex that maybe has a field that works, and there's a net and a hole in the net, but it's okay, it'll be fine. They're never going to be as good as the team that you give all the money and all the attention and all the fame and all the glory and all the alumni contributions and all the other stuff to. I know that. Look at the fact that the USA always wins most medals at the Olympics. It's not because we're better than the poor countries. It's because we pour the most money into it. It's because we have a huge pool of athletes to draw from and we can afford to train them in the best facilities. From the time a kid is born, we tell them boys can be pros and girls can look cute. Okay? We tell them, oh, well, you can go pro and use your pink tennis skirts and make half what the boys do, even though you're working just as hard. And you're gonna get like the third ranked slot on ESPN after the poker tournament and the like sub golf cricket combo match. Oh yeah, and then let's not even talk about the fact that, so I'm watching the other day, and my son asked me this, and I was like totally unable to reply. It was, what's the game called? The one where they play in the sand pit, sand volleyball. And there was a boys' team on one screen and a girls' team on the other. And my son looks at me and he goes, Mom, why do the boys have clothes on and the girls are in their underwear? And I said, honey, I don't know. Because I honestly can't understand why. It's not like they're worried about the microseconds a difference might make in a swimsuit or something. I'm like, that's a good question. Why are the boys in rash shirts that protect you from the UV rays and shorts that go down to your knees? They're obviously playing just fine. The girls are over there wearing outfits that are exposing everything in the sun. Now, I respect the right of a woman to wear anything she wants, and if they want to wear that outfit, cheer them on. But the fact that their sponsors stick them in those outfits, that bothers me. Really bothers me when I see 8-year-olds on teams stuck in those outfits. That really bothers me. So here's the deal. People come back every single time you bring this up. The minute you bring this argument up, that girls are as good as boys at sports, what do they say? Boys are naturally stronger than girls. I look them in the eye and say, do you know that there are female Navy SEALs? Do you know that there are female Army Rangers? Those girls do every single thing. They do not lower the standards, okay? So those women jumped, cut, grabbed, hauled, lifted, pulled, jumped, swam, did every other thing that those men do. If they can be a Navy SEAL, they can be a pro football player. If they can be an Army Ranger and jump out of an airplane and take everything out like they're trained to do, they can play a hockey game. Do not give me this BS that boys are somehow magically better at sports. Girls are underpaid, undervalued, underfunded, underloved, and not cared about. That's why they don't succeed at sports. If you take them from the age of Vinny in the back here and you give them everything the same as the boys, they will succeed or exceed everything that the others do. So, the next argument that they love to make. But the locker room conversations and the girls might get assaulted. I have an idea. Teach your boys not to be rapists. How hard is this? My son is 5 and we've already had this conversation. Like, you don't touch another person's body unless they say that it's okay. Like this, how hard is this? Maybe if you moved your locker room conversations out into a meeting room like normal, sane adults have. How creepy is it that we let these adults in with our half-naked kids anyway? Frankly, I find that a little creepy. So you're sitting here telling me that this is times where we have to have gender segregation, but it's okay because the boys have it better anyway and everything's better. But at the same time, we're gender blind and we swear that it's good. Yeah, you're gender blind, huh? Then how come every single female team gets paid less? Every single one. Well, they bring in less ad revenue. Every single one of them is at a bad slot on TV. Not a single one of them gets prime time. That's right. Down patriarchy, man. Down with the patriarchy. But seriously, if a woman can be a Navy SEAL, she can play pro anything. I have watched those people train. Okay? I couldn't do it. But there are people who can, you know? And I think that the teams would be better for it because you wouldn't have a lot of the crazy behavior that you do now because this attitude of boys will be boys would have to stop. Because that's not an acceptable attitude in any arena. Thank you very much. Women do the hardest jobs on the planet every day. They can play your games as well. So it's okay to separate our genders if we're focusing on overcoming a gap in knowledge or if we're trying to make a situation better for a group, like extending medical care to African Americans or doing other things to try and do that. But it's bad to separate when we're implying somehow that a gender or a group is less than another. I want to offer one more area before we close where I think it's good to offer the separation, but I do think we have to be really careful on this one, so it's a little more fuzzy. Sometimes people ask me why, within our really wide-ranging liberal faith, why we even bother to have Sunday worship. Why don't we just stay home, sleep in on Sundays, and just chill out and be good people? But the answer is that for most of us, if not all of us, this room here is one of the few places, if not the only place in our lives that we can let our masks down for a little while. We can let the walls down and just be who we are. Now, I'm going to talk a lot next week about wearing masks and persona, and we're getting into depth psychology, which is one of my favorite geeky subjects to talk about. But for now, the basic idea I just want you to have is that there's a lot of masks that we wear in our life, right? And that's normal and that's fine because a lot of the labels, a lot of the masks that we wear, we choose, right? Mom, wife, friend, companion, professor, whatever. We put a lot of them on ourselves, and that's good. The ones we choose are good. But in our lives, we also have a lot of them that are put on us that we may not choose, that we may not like nearly as much, right? The ones that people apply to us, and I'm going to use a few, and if, these may hurt because they do, right? Autistic, queer, mentally ill, flamingly liberal, snowflake, fat. Like, people put all of these labels on us, and we have to build up walls. We have to build up walls to protect ourselves because every one of those masks can come in like a wrecking ball and just crash you in the face. So coming to a place like this, for many of us, is one of the few places where we get to take those off and throw them on the floor for a while and not have to deal with them. But here's the thing. When we're dealing with this, when we're dealing with these space, when we're dealing with all these labels, sometimes, even this beloved community, there's folks that might not understand. It doesn't mean they don't want to. Everybody here, I absolutely know, wants to understand. But sometimes we just don't have the experience, Whether it's of being a parent if we're not, or whether it's of caring for a loved one who's ill if we've not been there, or if it's being single if we're not, or whatever that experience that's really eating us is, if we are in the middle of that and we just need somewhere to let those walls down, sometimes we need an even smaller place where we can really, really just be in that mask, in that moment, let that wall down and just absolutely give in to a place in ourselves. So that's why, as an example, the UUA has trans-only gatherings. If you're not transgender, you're not welcome. And, you know, for some people, there's always people every time the meetings come up that get angry about it, saying, well, why can't I be invited? Why am I not part of this? Why are you excluding me? And the answer is, it's not about excluding you. It's about making us safe. Because the whole rest of the world wants to exclude us, you know, so we need a place of safety. And so one of the things that's hard, it's really hard, is to talk about when should we be exclusionary to make others safe. And it is about equity because, you know, cisgender folks don't get accosted in the bathroom, right? By somebody saying, oh, you don't belong in here, I'm gonna call the cops. Some of my clergy colleagues have been through this experience. And that's a terrifying thing. They never have to worry about what's gonna happen, you know? Some of my clergy colleagues, I mean, you know, our country is a big place, but some of the colleagues in the UUA right now are facing situations where, like, they're afraid to travel because they're afraid they or their families might be detained or deported, and they don't know what to do with that. I mean, I don't have that experience. I am a white-skinned girl. I am an American citizen. Doesn't mean in this crazy world that I might not face that someday, right? Like, I know it can happen. I'm a Jew, I know it can happen. We've been there. But at the moment, my skin color is okay. At the moment, I don't have the last name Hernandez, right? Like, at the moment, I don't have this. So those folks need that space where they can talk, where they can process, where they can figure out whose lawyers to call if this happens to them. And it's not about me in those places. It's about giving them the space to be scared together. In conclusion, for me, equity can be a paradox. Most of the time, equity is about opening the doors wider and wider and wider, pushing the edges farther out so that everybody gets an actual equal chance. Rigging the game so that everybody who started out behind still gets the same chance as the ones that came in the middle. But at other times, here's the paradox, equity becomes about exclusion, about carving out a space for some folks to be separate, to embrace their differences and to lay down the burden of their differences and of not being welcomed or of looking over their shoulder because they're in a place finally full of people just like themselves who carry that exact same load. Together and apart, apart and together, expanding to the edges and offering a safe haven within our borders. These are ways we can offer equity to all who find this place, as we're creating together a beloved community in the midst of the chaos out there. Amen and blessed be. Our final hymn this morning is number 346. Come sing a song with me. Before Nathan takes over, I just wanted to say if you have not filled out your pledge card for this year yet, we do have a bunch of them in the offering plates. So you can just grab them, fill them out, and hand them right back to Nancy.
Okay, so as a just a little friendly reminder, as Robin passes around the offering basket, I want to offer the general reminder that this community of faith is only supported by your giving. Now that can be financial or volunteer. Just a little example of volunteering. I volunteer to serve on the religious education committee, and I've also volunteered in several things in the past. You can ask a couple board members. I've done a lot of stuff. So if you can help, if you can't help volunteer time, you also can volunteer by giving financially, and especially like bringing stuff for coffee hour. Like I've donated coffee creamer, and that goes over very well, especially in this congregation. Also, yes, and also snacks too, because when you're drinking coffee or tea, you want to eat too. So please donate as you can with your time, talent, or treasure. All are needed for this church to prosper. And also, if this is your first time, this is our gift to you. So, okay, hi Vinny. You can also mail your financial gift to the First Unitarian Church, Post Office Box 494 in Alton, Illinois, or giving through Givelify. If you are willing to donate your time or talent or treasure, please contact a board member. Please join me in our offering prayer. May this offering equip us to inspire love and seek justice. Okay, so here are announcements. Of course, if you want to put an announcement up, please see us before service. Let's see, next.
June 8th is wrong. June 8th is going to be thank you, Marlene Brickle.
Okay, so please disregard June 8th. That will be changed next week. But yes, next week is Reverend Dr. Claudia Hall again. And let's see, do we have any other announcements? Oh, yeah, we also have to take down again today. So after coffee hour, if you have time, please come in and help us rearrange the room again. And also next week we'll have to set up, and then June 1st take down again. Okay, Goshen Market starts June 7th, 8 a.m. to noon. If you've never been to the Goshen Market, it is the farmers market down here in Edwardsville, Illinois. I volunteered a couple times last year, and when we gave out books, I hope so too, because that went over so well, especially with parents. Like, of course, with our lovely little sign that said, "Oh, gluten-free too." Everybody laughed at that. So yes, if you are interested, please contact our RE coordinator, Jennifer Lewis. I will need help with that. So yes. It is very fun, especially getting to know all the small businesses and vendors around Edwardsville. And then storm cleanup, as Reverend Dr. Claudia Hall also mentioned. First UU in St. Louis got a little bit of storm damage from the tornado from Friday. It is from 2 to 5 p.m. today. Yeah.
What do we need to bring? Chainsaws, army boots?
Yeah.
Okay, so an email went out to everyone. You just refer to that because it went out to everybody who gets the newsletter. So it should be in your email because it's a very long list of stuff.
It's in UU Friends also.
Okay, it's in UU Friends, or it went out by email. Check those because it's a long list. They don't have power, so anything you bring needs to have batteries or be gas powered or whatever. Assume that you're going to clean up trees because that's what's happening. The trees all fell down, so they just need help cutting up trees and doing other tree stuff. Mm-hmm.
I do too.
It's really a long list, and I just didn't want to have everybody confused about what it is. If you want to talk about it, you can talk about it after church. We can deal with it out there. It's long enough, so let's just talk about it after church. And yeah, we're over time. So.
Yes, you can
Okay. So, now I invite you to join me in reciting a prayer to extinguish our chalice. The light of truth cannot be put out until we meet again. Hey, I like our spirit team today.
Right? We do. We have a spirit speaker today. May the words of our mouths and meditations of our heart bring love and hope to this community and the rest of the world today and every day, until all are truly equal and there's never a need to separate ourselves to find peace again. Amen and blessed be. Go forth in peace.
We are on a journey. We're traveling to fullness. We're building on the pathways of those who came before us. We are called to justice, freedom, equality, truth, compassion, and always love.
Where routes were misdirected and paths were not completed, new roads must be erected, old obstacles defeated.
We are called to justice, freedom, equality, truth, compassion, and always love. We're widening our highway on our journey to completeness. Our tunnels come through hatred, our bridges span between us. We are called to justice, freedom, equality, truth, compassion, and always love. Together we love stronger. Together we love sooner. Together we love longer. Together we love truer. We are called to justice, freedom,